A Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government, and what no just government should refuse or rest on inference. Hello, I'm Alan Scholl, Director of the Freedom Project, sponsored by the American Opinion Foundation. In this episode of our Principles of the Constitution series, we're going to focus on the first 5 of the initial 10 amendments to the Constitution, also known as the Bill of Rights. Here's a question for you. True or false, the Bill of Rights was designed to give more power to the federal government? The answer is false. The Bill of Rights was actually designed to put limitations on government. To start off with, I'd like to bring in our friend Dr. Smith. Doctor, tell us, did the Bill of Rights give Americans rights?
According to the Founding Fathers, the Bill of Rights did not create rights for Americans. Most of them would believe that the rights that we have are what they would call God-given rights. And the Bill of Rights simply recognizes those rights and then prevents government from infringing upon those particular rights. Government doesn't really create rights in that way, at least not in the way that the framers of our Constitution thought of as rights. Government respects our rights by limiting its actions in particular areas in which we do have those rights. And so our freedom of speech exists regardless of what our government does, according to the Founding Fathers. Our government respects our freedom of speech by not passing laws that infringe upon that freedom of speech. And so government doesn't create the right, government merely recognizes the right as defined by the Bill of Rights.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. It was in 1789 that the amendments were introduced as a series of legislative articles by our 4th President, James Madison. 2 years later, in 1791, they were approved by 75% of the states and became the first 10 amendments. The Bill of Rights was designed to protect the natural rights of all Americans, to set limits on what the government can and can't do in regards to personal freedoms. The original concept of a Bill of Rights was extremely controversial. Many argued that it wasn't necessary. One such person who argued that it wasn't necessary was Alexander Hamilton, who said, "Here, in strictness, the people surrender nothing, and as they retain everything, they have no need of particular reservations." In other words, Hamilton feared that by listing specific rights, any rights that weren't listed might be lost. Someone who was very much in favor of a Bill of Rights was Thomas Jefferson, who said, "Half a loaf is better than no bread. If we cannot secure all our rights, let us secure what we can." The Bill of Rights reserves all rights not mentioned in the Constitution to the people themselves or the states. Originally, 12 articles were proposed, but only the last 10 were ratified by the states. The articles not originally included were Article 1, which dealt with the number of U.S. representatives, Article 2, which limited the power of Congress to increase its own salaries, which was eventually added as the 27th Amendment. Looking at the first 5 amendments, the first establishes individual freedoms such as free speech, free press, and free assembly. The First Amendment states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." In other words, the Founding Fathers wanted the citizens to be able to critique the government without risking punishment. The Second Amendment has to do with the militia and the right to keep and bear arms. It states, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." The founders had come from countries where the only people who had weapons were the soldiers. In fact, the founders felt so strongly about the citizens being armed that Patrick Henry said, "The object is that every man be armed." The Third Amendment deals with soldiers forcing their way into private homes. It says, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law." This amendment was made because British troops were staying in American homes without permission. The Founding Fathers wanted to make sure this never happened again. The Fourth Amendment focuses on the rights Americans have if law enforcement wants to search your property. In more detail, it says, "The right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated." The entire Fourth Amendment protects Americans from government harassment or seizure of property without constitutional justification. It is really the only amendment that confirms the right of private property and requires law enforcement to prove legal cause before entering your property for any purpose. The Fifth Amendment covers rights found in the court system, including due process and being charged with the same crime twice. No person shall be held to answer for any capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life. The Fifth Amendment also protects citizens from testifying against themselves, and it protects personal property. Did you get all that? Let's find out. Question 1, true or false? The Bill of Rights gave Americans rights. The answer is false. The Founding Fathers were clear that man's rights were inherent and God-given. The Bill of Rights merely acknowledged them. Question 2. Who drafted the Bill of Rights? A. Abraham Lincoln. B. Thomas Jefferson. C. Alexander Hamilton. Or D. James Madison. The answer is D, James Madison. He actually drafted 12 amendments, but only 10 were ratified. Question 3. Which is not listed in the First Amendment? A. Freedom of speech. B. Freedom of the press. C. The right to bear arms. Or D. The right of peaceful assembly. And the answer is C. The right to bear arms is protected under the Second Amendment. Question 4. The Third Amendment deals with what? A. Freedom of the press. B. The right to bear arms. C. Quartering soldiers. Or D. Double jeopardy. The answer is C, quartering soldiers. The founders wanted to be sure soldiers stayed in designated barracks and not people's homes. Question 5. The Bill of Rights contains what? A. The first 12 amendments. B. The first 10 amendments. C. The first 8 amendments. Or D. The first 5 amendments. The answer is B. James Madison submitted 12 originally, but only 10 were ratified. How did you do? Hopefully we were able to teach a little more about the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Next time we'll take a look at the last 5, or the second half, of the Bill of Rights. I'm Alan Scholl for the Freedom Project. Welcome home.